Hey everyone, welcome back to Bucky's Customs. Hey, in this video I'm going to make a custom cutting board for a friend of mine. It's been something I wanted to do for a long time, haven't had the time to do it, and now we're going to get after it. So I've glued up this piece of walnut, and what we're going to do is we're going to carve the outline, the handle. I'm going to put a juice groove in it, and I'm also going to carve my friend's name in it, and we're going to do it all with the Longmill. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, before we get started with the project, I just have to say thank you to this week's sponsor, Sienci Labs, the makers of the Longmill benchtop CNC, just like the one we use here in the shop every week. I love my mill, you will too. Go to their website, cnc.com, and order yours today. Now let's get back to our video. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just getting all the scraps that I had cut off on one end to give me a nice square cut. I've already ran all the scraps through the table saw to get them to the right width that I wanted, and now we turn them up on edge. What this is more like an edge grain, not an end grain, and from there I cut all the ends, and then we glue the panel up and put it in the ritter board. As I glue each piece, I set it in the ritter board, so which you'll see happen here pretty quick. And then I just took a couple of bar clamps and pipe clamps and put it on there, and we let it dry overnight. And it kind of worked out really well for me, only because it kept it nice and flat, and I had a minimal amount of sanding. I ran it through the drum sander a couple of times and we got it flat, and that's where we're at to start carving with a Longmill. Okay, let's get making this cutting board. And we are going to create a new model. Let's just leave this 24 by 24. The units will be inches, and we'll start from this bottom corner. Okay, so here we go into our workspace, and I'm going to start by going to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to make me a rectangle. Now I'm going to make the width 14, and I'm going to make the height 15, because that's about the size of the material that I have. I'm going to position this particular rectangle. I'm going to start right here in the bottom corner. So what we're going to do is make this 7, and we'll make this, what was my other dimension, 7.5, and there we go. Basically I just split it in half because our reference point is in the center of the circle. So we'll create this, and we got our first rectangle. We want to create a 2" by 10 rectangle, so we're going to do that. And we're going to go 2" by 10", and we're going to create that, and we're going to come up here, and we're going to notice how it selects it center. I'm going to move it over to the center, so right there. Now we're going to create another rectangle. Got to put a handle in here, so let's do this in 2". So we'll do another rectangle. We'll do 2" by 4". So come over here and do 4 and 2. And then we're going to create this. And I'm going to select it, center to center. There. Now we've got a rough cutting board all ready to go. So now what we want to do is I want to smooth out some of these corners. Okay, let's cut some of these lines. Remember, we got to click twice because there's 2 lines in there. And just a reminder, go up here to the top right and make sure that your options is auto join. Ours is. What that does is when you cut your line, it automatically joins both sides. So we should have one complete vector, and we do. This is our exterior shape for a cutting board with a handle. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put a circle on this end here. So we're going to go over here to the circle tool, and I'm going to create a circle. Now our diameter is going to be, let's do 4 inches. We're going to make this a big circle. So let's create that. Now what we want to do next is we want to position it so that it falls well within our parameters. We also want it to have a little handle there. So I want to move it to the right to 20. There we go. So I kind of like that. That'll work for me. So that's our circle. So now let's go over here and cut this shape out of here so that we have one big piece. And there we go. We want to create another circle inside of this circle. So let's go over here to the circle tool and let's create another circle. Now we know this one is 4 inches. So let's do 2.5 and create that circle. Now we also know that we need to position this circle in the center of this outer circle. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here to the transform tool and I'm going to make this a 20. Whoops. Apply. Now it's centered. Now we want to bring it up here. Now we also know our board is 15, so we're going to go 7.5 and apply. Now we've got it in the center. Okay, so now what we need to do, now that we've got the outermost portion of the shape created, we are going to try to smooth out some of these corners, basically, because when we cut this out, the outer corners will be pointed, the inner corners will be filleted or rounded. And the reason for that is because we're using a round bit, obviously. Cannot do an inside corner like that. These will be squared, these will be round. If we do anything, we could round these outer corners over. And we can do that by selecting our fillet tool, which is right here, and click on that corner, and that will round that over. We can do the same thing all the way around the board to all the outside corners. There we go. So now, right here as well, this is going to not be a sharp point. We could kind of put that little bit of a curve on that as well. We don't need to, but we could. We could do it on all of them. And there we go. So now everything's softened. That gives us our board. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to put a little juice groove in this. So let's go over to the rectangle tool. We got to create a path for the thing to do it for the tool to be able to do this. So I'm going to roughly eye this up, and we're going to come over here, and we know the width of our board at that point is 14 inches, so we're going to do 12 inches that way. And we know the width of our height of our board is 15, so we're going to do 13 inches that way. And our center point is going to be in the wide, be 7.5, and this way is going to be 7. Let's create that. So now we're positioned perfectly in here. This will be our juice board. And how I got these dimensions over here is basically it's half of this dimension, which was 14, is 7. That's our x. X runs right to left, y runs up and down. So you figure your coordinates based on that, and then our starting point here is 0. So everything runs off of your 0 point. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put a name on this board. And I'm making it for a friend, so I want to put his last name on this board. So let's go over here to the text tool, and I'm going to click in the workspace. I'm going to come over here and make sure that it's the font I want, and it is. Now I'm going to type in his name. And there we go. So let's create. Now we're going to come over here to the transform tool again, and I'm going to rotate this around like that, and then I'm going to drag it over into here. Origin position, okay, the width was 10 inches. Let's make it 8.5. And we're going to make it 1.75. Apply that. 0.5. Apply that. Okay. So now what we want to do is, because this is a 15-inch board, we want to put our Y at 7.5 and hit apply. I like it. So there we have it. Our board is designed, and now what we need to do is create our toolpaths. Let's do the text first. So let's select the text, and we'll come over here to toolpaths, and we will select create profile. Now I want to do this on the inside of the vectors. So our start depth is 0. We're going to do this at 0.125, which would be 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to select the 1/8 inch end mill because I'm pretty sure a 1/4 inch is going to be too big. So I don't need any ramping or any of that stuff. And what ramping is if you're using a cutter that cuts from the side like a surfacing bit would do, you want it to kind of gradually go in and move at the same time so that it doesn't plunge too rapidly. And that's what the ramping is. So anyway, I am going to define this material of 1 inch, and we're going to call this name, and we're going to come up here and we're going to edit some of these settings. Now I'm using an 1/8 inch bit, so an 1/8 inch bit is 0.125 thickness, and generally you want to be a little bit less than half of that for your step over. That way you don't create any lines. I'm going to do a step down of 0.05, and then I'm going to do a feed rate of 90. Should do it. My plunge rate should be okay at 30. Actually, I'm going to make this, I could probably do 100 with no problem, but now we're doing an 1/8 of an inch bit, so I think I'm going to do 70, and it is walnut. So let's do that, and we don't need any bridges, and we can calculate. So there we go. Our toolpath is defined. You can see where the bit's going to go here. Make sure you have no clamps in the way. Okay, all the other toolpaths are pretty much the same as the first one. Speeds and feeds will be a little bit different depending on the depth. I'll make sure that I put all the speeds and feeds in the description below so that you can check them out and make changes according to how you want. So now let's create our toolpaths. And how we're going to do that is we're going to go over here to the toolpaths button way over here on the right, and we're going to click save. Now you noticed all the toolpaths are right here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to name this Walnut Board with handle, and we are going to go to browse this. I think I'm going to put it in my toolpaths area, and we're going to click save, and we get an error. Toolpaths, thumb hole, end mill, 1/4 inch, and name all these do not support tool changing. My post processor does not support this, so I guess that just threw a wrench in that. Let's do it individually. I've already saved them individually, but I do that anyway. I always do that off camera. I never save them together. I like to keep them separate, and then when I do the carve, I go in and I do this to show you how to save them all that way. But anyway, we can't save them together, so we're going to have to save them separately. I am not 100% sure how to do UGS with multiple tools. I was unaware until we just got to here that I could not do multiple tools. And the crazy part about this is my first carve with a multiple tool. So hey, live and learn. We'll check it out. We'll put it on the blog. We'll see if anyone can give us a little instruction on this. But that's another thing you can do is you can go over to the Longmill Mill One Facebook page and ask all kinds of questions on our Longmill. And you know, community is outstanding there. So that's one thing you can do. You can also email Sienci.com directly, and they will surely get back to you. They're very, very good about that. Okay, now we're going to attach the cutting board to the waste board, and I'm going to use painter's tape. This is a trick I learned from my brother-in-law, Vernon Hinkle. He uses CA glue a lot, and that's what we're going to use here. I put the painter's tape to put a barrier between the CA glue, push it down, a little activator, and it holds pretty good. So we went ahead and we zeroed out our X, Y, and Z, and of course the gremlins started already, and as you can see very shortly, bam, there it is. A nice little hole. I hit start and it drilled a hole right to the nut on the router. So second gremlin of the day is this little box. I had a piece of wood break away, one that I had glued on because I realized it wasn't wide enough, and didn't notice it until I was editing the first run of video, and I had already carved it. So it is what it is, I guess, and we move on. So enjoy the carving, folks. Okay, so the lettering is done. The machine went back to 0 to the starting point and is in between tool paths here. And I'm changing the bit for the next tool path, which is going to be the thumb hole in the handle. And I'm kind of cranking the router up with the thumb screw at the top, only because I'm going to need to do an XYZ again with a 1/4 inch bit. And you'll see me go ahead and set up the touch plate and zero it out, and then we'll go ahead and start the next tool path for the thumb hole, and we'll watch that run. Okay, so it's pretty much okay so far. I decided at this point to check the depth, and I realized that I wasn't going to be deep enough. Uh, I've got one more pass to go around, so what I did was I paused the mill and I turned the screw at the top where the belt is and lowered the router just a touch so that I could make sure that I get through the board. Keep in mind when you're doing this that, I've done this a few times and never had this issue. But in this particular case, we were introduced to gremlin number 3, and it really bummed me out. Just really bummed me out. So, but stuff like this happens, and, it is what it is, I guess. It's still a nice cutting board. Well, that was interesting, huh? I don't know what to say about that. I've had issues in the past with UGS, and I kind of just took it in stride, and I think that's what we need to do. Um, I wanted to show you what actually happens in real life. When we make a video, we have the opportunity to edit and put things in and not show the bad and only show the good. But as a new CNC user myself, I've made plenty of mistakes. And I'm not so sure this one was my mistake, but it could have been, I guess. And unless someone can find the data to prove that, I guess I'm just going to call it a glitch right now. It was kind of heartbreaking. You could probably see it on my face, but you know, it's part of all of this. using the Longmill has been a phenomenal experience for me. And I am loving it every time I'm using it. It's something new. I get to create things that I, in the past could only watch other people do or whatever. But, I make gifts for people that I know, and it's a very gratifying experience. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Didn't come out the way we really, hoped it would, but I really think it did have a positive ending. It showed some realism, and I really, really wanted everyone to know that, not everything is cut and dry or as it may seem. I try really hard to do things so that I'm not wasting your time. But in this case, I think you really needed to see this. So, hey, listen, if you liked it, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Ring the bell so you can get notified when I post again. And please go to Sienci.com and check out this great machine. You'll be really happy you did. Until next time, folks, be safe out there.